Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. Lucky Strikes blowing smoke rings at you from the studios of Comfortably Zoned Radio. And it's time for Dodgers baseball, a tale of two cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk. My co-host is Ron Rabinovitz. Hello, Ron. How
you
are
doing, Peter? Good. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Doing very well. I hear you have some big shot, an author that we're going to talk to, and I want to give it over to you. I want you to take it over, and this is going to be great. I'm really, really looking forward to this. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Okay. Our guest tonight is Ed Henry. Ed serves as the Fox News Channel Chief National Correspondent. He's joined the network in 2011. Throughout his tenure, Ed has covered all major news stories involving President Trump and the former President Obama. Formerly, he worked for CNN for many years, and it's an honor to have you on our show, Ed. You just wrote a book.
It's great to be on with you.
Thank you. You just wrote a book called 42 Faith. I absolutely love it. You know how much I love Jackie Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
I was a very dear friend of Jackie's. And I would like to just talk to you a little bit about the book and how it got started and how you, as a news broadcaster and news correspondent, would get involved with Jackie Robinson.
Well, I'm a big baseball fan, and so I have a passion for it. I've had a lot of people ask me, why in the world didn't you write a politics book? Why are you writing about baseball? And I think it's nice to have another passion outside your day job, first of all. And second of all, I'm not sure the world needs another book about Obamacare or Donald Trump or, there's certainly a lot of those. I wanted to write about something different. And I know you're passionate about the subject of Jackie Robinson as well. It might have been a little odd for me as well because I grew up a Yankees fan in New York. And obviously the Dodgers had skipped town and gone to Los Angeles long before I was growing up. But I've always had a love for the 50s baseball in New York, the Dodgers, the Giants, the Yankees. The idea that you had three remarkable teams with their own fan bases, all within a subway's ride of one another has always fascinated me. And I then backed into this, though, 10 years ago. I was at a dinner party here in Washington, D.C., at the Belgium ambassador's house. And, Ron, you get invited to a dinner like this and you think, oh, I've made it. This is some fancy dinner at an ambassador's house. But when I sat down, the first strike, I guess, in baseball parlance is that they served pigeon. The ambassador served pigeon. And you know this. I grew up in New York, and I thought pigeons are these dirty birds, Some people call them flying rats. I'm like, what is this on my plate? The second thing, I slice into it, and it's got these little bones in there. I turned to this woman next to me, and I said, God, this is strange. And I said, I'm eating pigeon? And she said, well, you're supposed to eat the bones. They're tiny bones, but also, it's not called pigeon. It's called squab. And I said, squab? Oh, there's a fancy term for it. She said, it's a delicacy in Belgium. It might be a delicacy in Belgium. It's not a delicacy in Astoria, Queens.
A pigeon? A pigeon's still a pigeon, right?
Yeah, so then it went from bad to worse because then the ambassador was giving an award to some senator, and the senator, rather than, this is a dinner party of 20 people, 25 people. So, you give, short remarks, you thank everybody, and you move on and tell me one story or something. Instead, the senator did a filibuster. Washington's famous for that. So the speech goes on for 20 minutes. So I turned to the woman next to me, older woman who had told me about squab. And I said, it's very nice to meet you. I'm going to go watch the World Series. It was October of 2007. She said, are you a baseball fan? I said, yeah. She said, my late father-in-law had a major role in baseball history, but the story has never been told. And I know you, Ron, as a baseball fan, would have done what I did. I sat back down. I said, what are you talking about? And the woman's name is Donna Shore. She's still alive. She's a journalist. And she said that her father-in-law was Dr. Wendell Fifield, a reverend in Brooklyn. 1945, there's a knock at the door. A man says he has a problem, needs to talk to the minister right away. The minister clears his schedule. Man paces around the room for 45 minutes, can't quite spit it out. The minister thinks, well, the man cheated on his wife or stole money from a business or, just is scared, embarrassed. Ministers deal with this kind of thing all the time. So, well, eventually he'll spit it out. He's embarrassed. After 45 minutes, the man still didn't tell him what the problem was. He slams his fist down, grabs his hat, says, "I've got it," and starts to leave. The minister says, "Tell me, out with it. I want to know what's going through your head, just in a good-natured way. And what problem did I help you solve without saying anything?" And she turned to me, the woman, and she said, "Do you know who that man was?" And as a baseball fan, I said, "Well, if it's 1945, Jackie's first contract was a minor league contract in 45. He played in 46 for the Montreal Royals. It had to be Branch Rickey." And she said, "Yeah, Branch Rickey secretly had second thoughts, went to this minister, and as you know, the movie 42, which is wonderful, and a lot of the books about Jackie, make it sound like Branch Rickey was so religious and full of faith that he never wavered and that he was determined to do this no matter what." And as I spun out this story and tracked it down as a reporter, it led me to realize that life is more complicated, obviously, for all of us, but especially a monumental decision like this. At the end of the meeting, by the way, I'll close this part by telling you that Branch Rickey said to the minister, "I've decided to sign Jackie Robinson the first baseball contract, hardest decision of my life. I needed to be in your presence," he said to the minister. "I needed to be in God's presence to know it was the right thing to do." Well, the minister kept it secret for a couple of decades. And I thought, wow, this is a powerful story. I mean, it's already a powerful story. You knew Jackie, but this adds another layer to it. And it told me, okay, did Jackie know that it almost didn't happen? How big of a role did faith in God play for Ricky in this decision? But finally, and most importantly, I think, how important was Jackie's faith in God? And, when you read the books and you watch the movie 42, Jackie's faith is not really ever mentioned or barely mentioned. And so I went on a journey and I found out a lot of new information.
Fabulous. Fabulous. How was the pigeon, by the way?
You know what? I usually don't turn down a meal, but this is one that I skimped on, and I must have had a frozen pizza when I got home or something.
That's great. Well, it's a fabulous book, Ed, and I just love it. I'm 3/4 of the way through it. I can't put it down, and I'm so excited you're on our show because I know who you are and what you are, and I admire you, what you've done in your career. And adding to this is just terrific. Yeah, you bet. Jackie was a very religious man in his own way. He was very religious. There's no question about it.
How did you find that, by the way? If I can try, I'm a reporter, so I probably shouldn't talk to you, but I was going through so much research, and one of the things I got was Jackie's papers at the Library of Congress, and I found an unpublished manuscript where he got very personal about his faith. But you knew him personally. I interviewed Carl Erskine and knew him personally. So how did you feel his faith was important? And then I'll tell you what I found.
Well, I'll tell you why, because he talked to me much about religion. I'm Jewish, and our family experienced quite a bit of, anti-Semitism and racial prejudice, as he did. So he related to my family real well, and he would talk about religion. He wasn't, the type of person that would be, really, pounding the gavel or whatever. Yeah. But he had his own religious, in his own quiet way. And Rachel also. They're just tremendous people.
And that's what I found, because the way I think you're saying it is the way my research turned it out, which is people have ignored Jackie's faith or played it down over the years for various reasons. One of them, I think, is exactly what you're saying, which is he didn't wear it on his sleeve. It was deep inside of him. It was very important. And Rachel recalls that in that rookie season of 1947, Jackie would come home every night on the subway from Ebbets Field to their tiny apartment. The apartment building is still there. I just went by there recently. Around Herald Square. Yeah, around Herald Square. And there's a little plaque outside there if you go check it out. Around 34th and 6th. And it says this is where Jackie Robinson got the call from Branch Rickey and the Dodgers at this apartment building to go and report to work, basically, in April of 47. So that's fascinating in of itself. But what Rachel remembers is that every night Jackie would come home, and before he went to bed, he'd get down on his hands and knees in that apartment in Manhattan and pray to God. I think that shows how, a small but important measure of it. And I think another important thing I talk about in 42 Faith is, Jackie's raised by this single mom. That wasn't mentioned in 42 Faith. she was she was a woman of great faith. The man had left her husband. She was a Methodist, like Branch Rickey's parents, which is an interesting connection. Coincidental, but interesting. And she instilled faith in Jackie at an early age. And, he joins a gang because he's raised by this single mom. He doesn't have a father figure. Right. He has a criminal record. He was arrested a few times. And it was a Christian minister named the Reverend Carl Downs who pulled him aside, as you know, and said, you're going to waste all this athletic talent unless you apply yourself. And he gets out of the gang. He gets involved in this Methodist church out in Pasadena. And what I found fascinating is when he goes to great heights at UCLA, even before the Dodgers, becomes a four-letter man, baseball, basketball, football, track and field. Every Sunday morning after playing on Saturday in the football team during the football season for UCLA, Jackie would say that he was battered and bruised. He'd still get up on Sunday morning and go back to Pasadena to teach Sunday school for Reverend Downs.
Teach Sunday school, yeah. He told me that.
That's interesting.
He used to teach Sunday school. It's so interesting.
How many college athletes today do that, Ron? How many pro athletes?
Right.
But whether it's Sunday school, whether it's a charitable event, I know some are active in charity, active in their church, but how many have that kind of commitment, that kind of character with Jackie?
Unbelievable. The character he had was phenomenal. I mean, he was a true hero. He never smoked, he never drank, he never took drugs, and he never refused to sign a kid's autograph. I mean, he was such a great guy. I knew him.
A lot of people, still a lot who would, get autographs and say that he was one of the most generous men. I think one of his only vices would be candy bars. Sadly, as you know, he had diabetes, and I get into the book how Leo DeRocher, in his second season, Jackie shows up for spring training, 25 pounds overweight. And DeRocher says, what are you, pregnant? And all kinds of things to needle him. And Jackie got very upset about it, but lost the weight. Yeah. But, he battled with his weight, as you know, and that was the thing that ultimately, he dies at the age of 53 of a heart attack. Right. And that's something I get in the book. He had a man of great faith, but it's very sad to me that, he didn't live to see Barack Obama elected the first African American.
Exactly.
Think about Willie Manning, the other great athletes who have been around to see some of these great advances.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I've had weight problems also, and he would write to me letters. I have all these handwritten letters from him, all personal letters over a period of many, many, many years. He was at my 10th birthday party. He sent me a telegram when I graduated from high school, and I spent time with him in New York. I used to be a garment rep, and I used to travel to New York, and we'd get together. And then he'd come out to Wisconsin many times. He was very active with the organization of the National Conference of Christian Jews and other organizations, and he would let us know. We'd spend the weekend or the afternoon or the evening with him. And he and my dad loved each other. My dad was a big Democrat. He was a Democratic National Committeeman for the state of Wisconsin. Jackie was Republican. So they used to argue all the time, but they loved each other, And my dad actually was very dear friends with Jack Kennedy and Bobby. As a matter of fact, they both slept at our home one night. And my dad was the one that was convinced him to run in the Wisconsin primary in 1960 because he felt that would help catapult him to the nomination if he beat Humphrey, which he did. Wow. And my dad took Jackie Robinson up to Jack Kennedy's suite in Washington to talk to him about possibly supporting him. And Jackie said no, he just couldn't do it. What did a rich kid from, New England have any idea of the plight of the African Americans? But
they were got behind Nixon, and then he kind of regretted getting behind Nixon because
he did. Yes, he did.
Because he felt, when Dr. King was jailed, and Jackie wanted Nixon to call him and help Dr. King.
He wouldn't do it. Right.
And so, and I get into politics a little bit in the book, but I tried to stay away because I felt like mixing politics and faith would be a mistake, so I focused more on faith. You mentioned your Jewish faith. I want to tell you a quick story that I found out after I did the book that was fascinating to me. It's not directly about Jackie, but it ties into what we're saying, which is that, I get into the book with Carl Erskine, as you know, is one of the last surviving Brooklyn Dodgers, a great man, 90 years old. He got behind Jackie early and often when, white teammates didn't get rewarded for standing up for a black teammate. I mean, there were others, as you know, who tried to block Jackie, and that's well done.
Right, exactly.
Erskine was and is one of the good guys.
Really
and he
good.
tells me
really good,
that, look, this couldn't have happened anywhere else but Brooklyn because it was a wonderful melting pot. And
yeah.
I think that's true to some extent, but I think just as I found history and the truth is more complicated than we think. There was this idea in history that Branch Rickey was dead certain and never had doubts. I think my book clearly shows he had some doubts. He had some second thoughts. He still went through with it, and he's still a hero, Rickey, like Jackie is. But we also heard that, Brooklyn's a melting pot. It was a wonderful place for this to be. And I do think Brooklyn was and is a wonderful place. But when my book was about to come out, I had a wonderful experience that you would have really enjoyed. Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the White Sox and the Bulls in Chicago, is a big character in my book. You probably see it in the early parts.
Yes, many times, yeah.
He was at Jackie's first game. He grew up in Flatbush. He played stickball with Duke Snyder, who lived down the street. I mean, that's another thing that kids today just don't get to experience. The idea that the Brooklyn Dodgers were that close to the fans and that close to the people. But Jerry, now obviously very wealthy, he invites me out to Arizona to promote the book during spring training. He's very generous with his time and says, hey, do you want to go to this baseball fundraiser, Stand Up to Cancer, that we're doing out in Palm Springs? Sure. So I get on a private plane with Jerry and Bud Selig, the former commissioner, and the three of us tell each other Jackie stories, and it's wonderful. And I bring a few books with me because the book hadn't even come out yet. So long story short, the owner of the house is this wealthy man, and he says, I want one of those books. I say, sure, I'm going to sign it for you. And I hand a couple out, Bud Selig and others, and I only have one left. And a man comes up to me who was a doctor who was part of this anti-cancer fundraiser, is a molecular biologist, and you mentioned your faith. He identifies himself as a Jewish man from Brooklyn and says, what's this book about? You wrote something about Jackie. And I thought, what does a molecular biologist know about baseball? I can't even pronounce molecular biologist, right? And he says, tell me the story. He said, I grew up a Dodgers fan. I said, I had no idea. He said, I was there in the 40s and 50s, et cetera. So I tell him about faith and how people mocked me and publishers turned me down when I said that I thought that faith played an important role in Jackie overcoming the discrimination and whatnot. And long story short, the doctor says, you know what? This book is fascinating to me. I said, why? He said, because I'll tell you my experience in Brooklyn. And he said, I remember I was a kid, 6, 7 years old, and I could finally read, and my mom would let me walk to school. And he said, we lived in Bay Ridge, which was a more, nice area of Brooklyn. And my mom would walk me to the corner and then let me walk 7 blocks to school. And I said, okay, where's the story going? And he said, well, I finally learned how to read. And there was one apartment building on the way to school that had a swimming pool. It was the only apartment building in Brooklyn that had a swimming pool. And I wanted to live there. And one day a sign went up saying, apartment for rent. And you can imagine this as a kid, as could I. And he said, I'm so excited I could read it. It's an apartment for rent. And then I looked at it, and it said, no Jews, no dogs, no N-words. No.
Yeah,
and
unbelievable.
He said it was devastating to me. I had to go home to my mom and say, so we can't live there because he was Jewish? And she said, no, we can't live there. But they have a swimming pool. And he went through the whole thing. I thought, Brooklyn was a melting pot in some ways, but actually, it's, again, the truth is more complicated. And the man had sort of tears in his eyes. I ran back and found that last book, and I handed it to him, and I signed it, and I said, I want you to have this. And he looked at me and said, I believe God played a role in changing this because I was there. I was in Brooklyn, and it wasn't as hospitable as a lot of people assume it was. And you understand that as a Jewish man. So I tell you, on the way out the door, the owner of the home, this big mansion in Palm Springs, said, oh, where's my book? And I had to stumble and say, well, I gave the last one to this guy who grew up in Brooklyn. And I had to make up a story or something because I felt bad I didn't have a book for him. I still have to send him a book because I've been so busy on the book tour. But I thought that this man who grew up in Brooklyn and told me that amazing story, he deserved a copy, and I signed the last copy in my possession. But it shows you how history is more complicated. Sometimes we glorify and say, oh, Brooklyn was such a wonderful, and again, I'm not knocking it, but this was America. This was the reality.
Right. Exactly.
And
it was a reality.
Stories. You tell stories like that, you realize this was hard. This was hard for Branch Rickey. This was hard for Jackie Robinson. And a white man and a black man, different generations, different regions of the country. Rickey came of age in Ohio, a farm near the Kentucky border. Jackie, I mentioned Pasadena. They had almost nothing in common, but a love for this game. Right. You and I both love baseball.
Right.
And a common faith in God. Faith in God.
Yeah. And Peter, he grew up in Brooklyn, right, Peter?
Yes. I was
Peter,
born in
you
East
there?
New York, 1946.
Yeah.
Wow.
A huge
I'm from
Dodger
Brooklyn.
fan.
I'm not Jewish, though. I'm a fallen away Catholic, but that's another story. And you know
Yeah, I'm
something?
Catholic
I'm
too.
sitting here, I'm listening to every word that you're saying, Ed, and what a fascinating story. It really is true what you say about the facts as we know them or we believe them and the truth. And although I will just add my own little addendum that Brooklyn, no matter how melting pot it was or wasn't, it sure was a far cry from Macon, Georgia, or Louisiana, or Mississippi, or
exactly.
Arkansas,
Right.
Exactly. So,
you make a great point.
Everything is relative. Everything is relative.
You're right. Because I defend Brantricky in the book because I air criticism of him because I want to be fair. And because some people hold up Ricky as a hero. Others say, well, if he was so determined to do this, he was in baseball for a few decades before he actually integrated the game. So what took so long? And I think that last point you made, he was an executive in St. Louis for the Browns and the Cardinals, both teams, before he was with the Dodgers. And St. Louis, as you say, Brooklyn was not perfect. St. Louis was nowhere near Brooklyn in terms of
that's
30s,
right.
40s.
That's
And there's
right.
no
That's
chance
right.
that he could have integrated the game. He would have been laughed out of baseball. He would have, and so it took real guts on his part. And look, there's so many layers to this story, and I just think that I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about it because
that's great.
this was such a monumental task. People might want to gloss over it, but 70 years later, it's still a divided nation in some ways. Yet a lot of progress has been made, and I think Jackie Robinson had a major role in that, and I hope people will check out for it.
Absolutely.
The name of the book is 42 Faith. The author is Ed Henry. We thank him very much for carving out some time from his busy schedule to come on the air with us tonight, and we wish you all the luck there is, Ed. And
I appreciate it.
Thanks again, and let us know how the book is doing, and whether you're going to write a follow-up maybe or whatever. And
I'm thinking about
even
it.
if you're not, you can come back and we can kick it around again.
I'd love to come back and kick it around. We had some good news last week, which is I received a phone call saying that this book that a lot of publishers said, well, there's nothing new about Jackie Robinson. Why would we publish this book? HarperCollins believed in me. I appreciate that because last week we got a phone call saying it made the New York Times bestseller list.
Great.
Yes, great. I love it. Ed, I want to stay in touch with you. And
let's stay in touch. Your story about Jackie is wonderful, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah. Okay. I'll send you a copy of Letters from Jackie that the MLB documentary was about Jackie and I.
I love it. Take care, guys.
I'll send that to you. Ed, thanks, buddy. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Wow, was he great, huh?
That was good. I enjoyed it.
Wasn't that good?
I enjoyed it very much.
Too.
I personally had the same reservations as HarperCollins had, and in that, what can possibly be new after all these books and all these years about Jackie Robinson? Well, I just learned what could be new.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
we thank him again.
So
and the name of the book again is 42 Faith, and the author is Ed Henry. That's great.
That was great, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was. It was. Had a good time with that. Had a good time with that.
That was great.
Well, it's just the start of things, so pull up a comfortable chair. And if you want to take your shoes off, go ahead, wiggle your toes, and we hope you'll have a Cole Schaefer or two throughout the broadcast. I would like to switch gears a little bit and talk about a teammate of Jackie Robinson's in Brooklyn. His name was Gino Cimoli. And Gino Cimoli was a Dodger outfielder for 1956, 7, and 8. He was born in 1929 in San Francisco. He lived 81 years and died in the same town. He was offered a basketball scholarship to the University of San Francisco. Played only 1 year of baseball in his senior year, but hit like 600 and something, 607 or something like that. And pretty soon the scouts came sniffing around in 1948, and one of the scouts was from the Yankees, Joe Devine. The other scout was from the Dodgers, Howie Hawk, H-A-A-K, and they would descend on the Somoli residence in San Francisco, and they were both hot to sign the young Gino Somoli. And Devine, the Yankee scout, spoke with the mom, the mother, and Hawk, the Dodger scout, spoke with the father. And they came back like 2 nights and then 3 nights, and the 4th night they came back, Hawk was drinking bourbon with the father, Somoli's dad, and the father went up to sleep, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the scout rang the bell, knocked on the door, came in, and said to the now awakened senior Somoli, "Who wears the pants in this house? Are you the man of this house?" And half drunk and half asleep, the father said, "Well, I wear the pants. I'm the man." He says, "Well, then the Dodgers want to sign your son. We want to give him $15,000. And he woke up the wife. He woke up the son, Gino. They came down to the kitchen. They signed the contract. The Dodgers had them. They signed them for $15,000, and they sent them. Of course, this was in 48, going into 49, the winter of, and he had to go for, as young ball players did back then. They didn't just come up to the team. They went down to the minor leagues, and he paid his dues down there. He had a really good spring for the Dodgers in Vero Beach in 1955, but the Dodgers had a guy named Sandy Amoros that they were planning on using as their left fielder. So Somoli didn't make the team in 55, even though he had a good spring. He came back in the spring of 56 after the Dodgers were world champions, and he actually made the club along with a 19-year-old pitcher named Don Drysdale. You might have heard of him.
I never heard
Smoley
of him.
and Drysdale. Smoley and Drysdale made the club. It was a disappointing 56 season for the young Somoli, though. Gino only played in 73 games, and he only had 36 at-bats. So many of those games he came in as a defensive replacement. But he did tour Japan after the 1956 World Series, and he played a lot in those games over in Japan for the Dodgers. And Walter Alston and the rest of the Dodgers found out that the kid could run, the kid could throw, and the kid could hit. And in 57, he started for the Dodgers' final year in Brooklyn. In fact, in opening day off of Robin Roberts, the Hall of Famer, he hit a 12th inning home run to win the game. That was the go-ahead game winner. So right off the bat, no pun intended, in 1957, Gino Somoli made a name for himself. He had a decent year, a very good year. Alston actually took him to the All-Star game in 1957. And Gino is remembered as the Dodger who scored the final run in Ebbets Field. The Dodgers, as most of our friends know, the Dodgers' final game in 1957 at Ebbets Field was pitched by Danny McDevitt, the left-hander Danny McDevitt, who shut out the Pirates 2-0. And Gino, like I said, scored that second run, the final run, in Ebbets Field. In 58, there's a funny story about Somoli. The Dodgers were playing, the Dodgers were playing against the Cubs in Arizona. And a photographer, do you ever see the pictures of old-time baseball? The photographers are right on the field with their cameras. Right. They're right on the field. They're in the on-deck circle. They're behind the coaching box. They're all over the place, right? Yeah. So anyway, there's a bunch of photographers on the field, and Somoli gets up and he hits a triple, and he slides into third base, and he's safe, and the third base coach is Charlie Dressen in 1956, and the photographer got a beautiful picture of Somoli sliding into third base safely, but he didn't know who he was because he wasn't really a boy of summer or a big star. So the photographer yelled to Dressen, in the third base coaching box, who is that guy? Because he needed a name to go with the photograph.
With the picture, yeah.
And Dressen says, Somoli. And the guy goes, who? And Dressen turns around and he yells, Somoli. And with the next pitch, Gino takes off for home plate, and he's out by 40 feet. And the reason for that is the signal for a not a steal of home, but a squeeze play was you yell out the base runner's name right before the pitch. So he yells out Somoli's name before the pitch. He's yelling to the photographer. Somoli thinks it's a squeeze play, and he starts off at third base and runs into the catcher who meets him like 20 feet up the baseline and tags him out. I thought that was a funny story. I thought I'd put that in there.
Story.
It is a funny story. It is a funny story. Somoli got traded. Actually, Somoli was the first baseball player to ever bat, the first major league baseball player to bat in an official major league game in California. When the Dodgers opened their 58th season, they opened it against the Giants in San Francisco. And the opening inning, the leadoff man was Gino Somoli. So he was the first major league hitter to actually hit in an official game out in California. After the 58th season, the Dodgers traded Somoli to St. Louis. You'll never guess who they traded him for. Who do you think they traded him for?
Who?
Wally Moon.
Wally? Oh, my God.
Wally Moon.
It turned out to be a good trade.
The trade turned out to be a very good trade. Wally Moon, known for his moonshots the next year, right? 1959, right? But he was later traded. He was later traded by the Cardinals to the Pirates, and Somoli played on the 1960 World Championship Pittsburgh club.
No kidding, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so he had a ring. He earned himself a ring. After baseball was over, he became a delivery man for UPS. You believe that? He became a delivery man for UPS. Wow. He worked 21 straight years. Get this, Ron. Wow. Somoli worked 21 straight years delivering parcels for the UPS without missing a day nor getting into an accident.
Oh, my God.
So
21 straight years. Wow.
Right. Actually, the UPS gave him an award at a dinner. And the award was for being the Iron Man. They called him, at the time, 1990, I think it was. He had just turned 60, Somoli. They gave him an award. They called him the Lou Gehrig of the UPS.
Really?
The Iron Man, yeah.
That's great. What a story.
Remember the World Series? I don't know if you remember in the World Series in 1989. On October 17th, there was an earthquake.
Yes.
Right before the game started, and all the players got in the middle of the field, and they brought their families out of the stands to stand with them on the field because it was safer. And it was a terrible, terrible earthquake. Anyway, that was October the 17th. October the 17th, 1989. Somoli was finishing up a UPS shift, and he was going for a cup of coffee when the earthquake hit. So what Gino Somoli did was he got in his UPS truck, and the UPS truck became an ambulance. And he drove around checking houses, and he's credited with saving a trapped woman's life about 3 blocks away.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Isn't that a wonderful story?
Wow, that's a great story.
Somoli died February the 12th in 2011. 2 weeks later, Duke Snider died, and the cynics said, even in the afterlife, it seems like Gino would struggle for playing time.
Yeah.
So Snider would be the center fielder up there, and Gino would be on the bench up in heaven. I thought that was a cute little
really
story.
Cute. Very cute. That story with that baseline, that was so funny. Samoa.
I'll tell you, yeah, right. Isn't that funny?
I love
Stefan
it.
yells out, Samoa. And the guy goes, who? And he goes, Samoa. And Samoa starts running home. He thinks it's a suicide squeeze. That's really, really funny. You know, just as a personal comment, whenever I would watch a Dodger game on the TV or listen on the radio, and Vin Scully would give the lineups, and he would say Samoli's name, I used to get very angry because as soon as I heard Samoli's name, that meant 95% of the time, that meant Duke Snider was not in the lineup.
Right.
So I used to hate when I heard Samoli's name being called out. But, that was a personal reason because my favorite Dodger was the Duke. Anyway, I thought I'd just regale our audience with a little bit of Gino Samoli stories. We had Ed Henry. We had Gino Samoli. We still have a little bit of time left. I would like to, again, pass it back to you, Ronnie, and maybe we can talk a little bit, before we go off the air tonight, maybe we can talk a little bit about these kids out in Chavez Ravine making a big splash out there for the Dodgers this season.
It's fabulous, Peter. There's so many great kids that have come up, and they're doing tremendously well. It's just unbelievable. For instance, Chris Taylor, he's a second baseman. I love him. He's absolutely terrific. He's batting .333. He's got 5 home runs and 16 RBIs. Now, I don't know what's going to happen when Forsythe comes back, and I guess he came back today. He's off the DL, but I don't know what's going to happen there. But I love this Chris Taylor. Another kid.
You know what? I love him too. I can't believe that he has all that power. Where does he get that power
Unbelievable. From? I don't know. Yeah. He's got power, this kid.
But
I mean,
Forsythe's
he played that many games.
Forsythe's going to have to play, though. He's making too much money to sit on the bench. You can't pay a guy all those millions and sit him on the bench. Maybe they'll find room over at third base. How is Justin Turner's health lately?
Well, he's on the DL right now. He had a bad hamstring, so he's out for a while, and they'll move him over to third then because they're not going to leave him out of the lineup. He's just too valuable right now. And then there's Brett Eibner. He came from the A's.
Yeah.
He's doing terrific. He's batting .313 with 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. And then there's Cody Bellinger, who I told you from day one, I said he's going to make the team this year. And boy, has he
something
made
else,
it
boy.
He is.
What a beautiful swing he has.
Oh, his hands are so quick.
Mm-hmm.
He's batting .295, 9 home runs and 24 RBIs. Andrew Tolles is a young kid. He's on the DL for the rest of the year. I don't know if you know this story, but there was I forget who it was pitching a no-hitter for the Dodgers. And there was a long drive to the left field, and he dove to try and get that ball to save the no-hitter. And he slammed his knee into the wall, and he's out for the whole year. ACL. It's a bad. Yeah.
I was watching
that
game.
Kid. Yeah.
I was watching that.
And I don't know
if
I was too. It was just, oh boy. And this kid, he was with the Rays. I don't know if you ever heard the story. He was with the Tampa Rays, and he was let go. So he was at a grocery store packing groceries in the shelves and stuff. That's what he was doing for a job. And then he got called. The Dodgers picked him up, and he lit up. I mean, he went through the minor league system like crazy. Just unbelievable. And you've got Greg Seglin, batting .292 with 7 home runs, 23 RBIs.
Seglin,
yeah. Jock Peterson's having an off year. He's a center fielder. He's batting .206 with 2 home runs and 11 RBIs. Then you've got Julio Urias, who I think he's got a big future. However, he's been disappointing the last couple of outings.
He has.
And they just sent him down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they rushed him too quickly. I think that he needs some more seasoning down there.
Well, the only
But he
reason
was
they brought him up
to-
that quickly, the reason they brought him up that quickly was because of Rich Hill's blister.
Right. Exactly.
So they brought him up a little bit too fast.
There's another kid that's coming up. Walker
Buehler.
Buehler.
Yeah.
Yep. He's a right-handed pitcher.
Did you see his stats down there?
Oh my God, he's unbelievable. Wait, he's going to be. They're claiming he'll probably be the next one called up. And then you've got kids like Willie Calhoun, who's batting .308 in the minor leagues, 9 home runs and 18 RBIs.
Wow.
You've got Alex Verdugo. He's batting .319. And then you've got a right-handed kid by the name of Yadier Alvarez. He's pitching 95 to 100 miles an hour. And he'll become, the Dodgers have been building from within. That's what they wanted to do. And they sure have. They have some tremendous prospects out there. And these kids are really coming around. They're, I don't know how Adrian Gonzalez will be back in the lineup. What are you going to do with Cody? It's just unbelievable. But it's fun to watch. And not only with the Dodgers, Peter, but I'm noticing that a lot of these teams, the young kids are really good. They're really coming along fast.
I'm going to name two. Two that have really impressed me. And they both appear to be clones of Cody Bellinger, and that is the New York Mets' Michael Conforto and the Boston Red Sox Benintendi. Is that the way you say his name?
Yeah,
Benintendi up in Boston. Benintendi and Conforto are going to be big stars. Boy, they can do everything. They're left-handed hitters. They're tall, lean, left-handed hitters, and they all play left field. Isn't that weird?
Isn't that something? Yeah, all left fielders.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Peter, that when the minor league kids used to come up, they'd be on the bench, they'd be a pinch hitter, they'd be this and that. These guys are jumping right in the works, and they're playing beautifully. It's just incredible. Yeah, it's exciting. So,
it is exciting.
And that, a lot of rumblings that we might be making some trades down the road here, and we'll see. Bryce Hopper,
there are rumblings.
Bryce Hopper's name is coming around.
I heard that the Dodgers were very interested in him as a free agent.
Yes.
In 2018, Harper.
Right.
I also hear in the New York press every now and then the noise is made about Ryan Braun coming.
Yes, I've heard that
to
too.
The Dodgers.
Yeah.
Right. He's an LA kid too.
Yeah.
We just have to wait and see.
Absolutely. Well,
but it is exciting when you see young kids produce.
Oh, and they're really producing. It's just been exciting. I just love it. It used to be you'd get a rookie, and I remember when Sandy Koufax first came in, and they'd say he's bringing him in from the bullpen, and I would cringe, just like you cringed when Gino Simone was coming in, because Sandy Koufax was wild, and you couldn't count on his pitching. He was wild. And I would cringe, oh, no, not him. Bring in somebody else. And look what happened to him, how great he was. Unbelievable.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, unbelievable.
One of the best I ever saw. The best pitcher I ever saw.
Me too.
Best pitcher I ever saw.
Me too. Yeah, and Clayton's right behind him.
Well, Clayton is really
pretty good.
Something. What Clayton has to do, Clayton Kershaw has to produce in the postseason.
Yes, that's right.
He has to come through in the postseason and lead the Dodgers to a World Series. And then and only then will he get his just due, because there are many people that put him down because they feel like he gets his ears pinned back in the postseason.
Yeah.
So he's got to come through. He's got to come through in the postseason. It's sooner or later it's got to happen for him.
Sandy was a horse. He came through during the year. He came through in postseasons. He was
God,
terrific.
yes.
So you're right. You're right.
Sandy
Well, this was fun
terrific.
tonight, Peter. This was great.
I'm sorry?
And having Ed Henry.
Yeah, that was
this
fun.
Was great
it
tonight.
was fun.
And Ed Henry was wonderful. And you got to read
Ed
this
Henry
book,
was
42
wonderful.
Faith. He was
Yep.
fabulous. It was a great,
42
great,
Faith.
great book. Yep, great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for booking him. He was a very good guest. Very good
He
guest.
was a good one. Yeah, he was
Okay,
great.
so on behalf of Lucky Strike, Schaefer Beer, Gino Simoli, Ed Henry, Rod Rabinovitz, Peter Trunk, we wish you a very pleasant good evening, and thank you for listening. I'll be talking to you on the computer and on the phone. Ronnie, take care of yourself, and
thanks, you
speak
too,
soon,
Peter.
okay? Thank you.
Okay, take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.